Every 9 years, the story goes, Athens sent 14 of its young people across the sea. 7 boys, 7 girls. Not as soldiers, not as settlers, not as prisoners, but as food. Somewhere beneath the palace of King Minos, in a maze built so cunning that not even its own architect could find his way back out, something was waiting for them. Half man, half bull. A creature born from a queen's unnatural desire and a god's punishment. The Minotaur. It's one of the most vivid monsters in Greek myth, and one of the strangest, because unlike the Sirens or the Laestrygonians, this one comes with an address, a real place, a real island, even a floor plan that you can walk through today with a ticket and a map. So what happens when a myth about a monster in a maze runs into an actual excavated labyrinth? The actual story is often told like this. King Minos of Crete goes to war with Athens and wins. As tribute, Athens must send 14 youths every 9 years. Some versions say every year, some say 7, but in the end, this is simply to be devoured by the Minotaur, a monster kept in a labyrinth built by the master craftsman Daedalus. The Minotaur itself is the product of a curse. Minos' wife, Paiasphe, is made to fall in love with a magnificent bull sent by Poseidon. Daedalus builds her a wooden cow disguise so she can, Greek myths don't exactly flinch much. And the result is a son with a bull's head and a man's body. Minos obviously is ashamed, but he doesn't kill it. He hides it. He has Daedalus build a prison so labyrinthine that the monster can never find its way out. Enter Theseus, Prince of Athens, who volunteers to be one of the tribute and kill the beast. Minos' daughter, Ardain, falls for him, gives him a ball of thread to unspool as he walks in so he can retrace his steps. Theseus kills the monster, follows the thread back out, and escapes, though he very callously abandons her on the island of Naxos while on the way home. It's a story about tyranny, tribute, and cleverness beating brute strength, and a maze so complex it becomes a character in its own right. Now, what really got me with this myth is that most Greek monsters live in vague, unmappable places. The edge of the world, the underworld, an island somewhere. But the Minotaur lives in a specific place, in a specific city, on an island we have excavated extensively for over a century. That's rare. And it means we can actually ask, does this architecture match this myth? In 1900, British archaeologist Arthur Evans began excavating a site called Knossos on the north coast of Crete. What he found was staggering. A palace complex covering over 6 acres with more than 1,000 interconnected rooms, corridors, staircases, and storage magazines, built and rebuilt across nearly 2,000 years of use, roughly 2,000 to 1,350 BCE. It is, by any reasonable definition, a labyrinth. Multiple levels connected by staircases that don't run in straight lines, corridors that double back, storage rooms nested inside storage rooms, some still holding the enormous ceramic jars, pithoi, as they're called, that once stored the region's oil, wine, and grain. A visitor from outside, say a tribute-bearing Athenian, could very plausibly get lost and never find their way back to the entrance. Evans himself made the connection immediately. He named the civilization Minoan, after Minos, before he had any proof the name belonged there. That is worth sitting with for a second. The modern label for this entire Bronze Age culture comes directly from a myth, not from anything that people who lived there called themselves. And this is where I have to flag something as an archaeologist, because it matters for how much you trust what you're looking at if you visit. Evans did not just excavate Knossos. He reconstructed large parts of it in concrete and painted in bright reds and blues based on how his reading of what should be there. Some of what tourists photograph today is not Bronze Age Crete. It's Edwardian Crete's best guess at Bronze Age Crete. It's a real methodological controversy, and I mention it here because we're about to talk about how myths get built on top of real evidence. And Evans's palace is itself a small myth built on top of real evidence. Though it is a wonderful sight, and I absolutely encourage you to visit, there's something that has always irked me about these rebuilt things that we now know are incorrect and have not gone back and fixed. So, let's set the palace aside for a second, because the bull imagery at Knossos is its own mountain of evidence. The most famous fresco found at the site shows a figure vaulting directly over the back of a charging bull, while others stand at either end, a practice known as bull leaping, or, and I will mess this up horribly, taurokathopsia. Whether this was ritual, sport, or some sort of religious performance is heavily debated, but the imagery is everywhere. Bull horns carved in stone at doorways, bull-shaped drinking vessels, bull figurines, seal stones stamped with bulls. Now, it isn't just imagery either. Excavators have discovered actual bull skulls and horn cores deposited in shrine contexts on Crete, alongside altars stained by what appears to be repeated ritual use. Seal stones show bulls not just leapt over, but bound, and in some scenes apparently sacrificed. Put the frescoes and the physical remains together, and you get a fuller picture. This wasn't decorative fondness for a striking animal. It was organized cult practice with its own priesthood, its own iconography, and its own architecture built to house it. Centuries before Greek writers ever put pen to the Minotaur story. You don't need a monster to explain this evidence. You need a bull cult, which, in my opinion, is far more mundane and much better attested with the actual archaeological evidence. This is usually where I would expect the episode to end. Cool, myth explained, bull cult done. But there's one more piece of evidence that gets closer to the word labyrinth than anything else we have, and it starts with a symbol carved into the palace's own pillars. Carved throughout Knossos is a repeated emblem, a double-headed axe, called in Greek a labrys. It shows up so consistently that most scholars treat it as sacred and not decorative, and it may be the actual root of the word labyrinth, not maze, originally house of the double axe. That matters because of what turned up on a clay tablet among the thousands recovered at Knossos, written in the earliest deciphered form of Greek, a script called Linear B. This fragment is reinforcing an offering to Potina, or mistress. In one widely cited reading, it's addressed to the mistress of the labyrinth. And if that holds, it's the earliest known written use of a word connected to labyrinth. And it's not describing a maze, it's describing a goddess, or a religious title, roughly 700 years before Theseus ever shows up in Greek literature and art. It's also not an isolated find. Potnia turns up on Linear B tablets at other Mycenaean sites too. Pylos, on the Greek mainland, records offerings to Potnia of her own in contexts that have nothing to do with Crete. That tells us this wasn't a one off local title invented for one goddess at one palace. It was a recognized religious category across the Mycenaean world, which makes the Knossos tablet look less like a curiosity and more like a local instance of a much older, wider religious pattern that later Greek myth had no memory of at all. Now, as you know, I want to be honest about the uncertainty here, because this is exactly the kind of evidence that gets oversold in YouTube videos all the time. The tablet is fragmentary. The translation is heavily contested. It might refer to a place name or a cult title or something we don't even have context to pin down. What it does show is that labyrinth, or a word very close to it, was already circulating on Crete in a religious sense centuries before Theseus was a story anyone told. One final piece. Around 1450 BCE, Minoan civilization on Crete suffered a major collapse. Palaces destroyed, populations disrupted. The causes are still argued to this day. The Santorini or Thera eruption and its tsunami, a wave of Mycenaean invasion from the Greek mainland, internal earthquake and fire, or some combination of all three. It wasn't a Knossos-only event, though. Phaistos, Malia, and other major Minoan cities show destruction layers from roughly the same window, which is part of why archaeologists treat this as a systemic collapse rather than one palace's bad luck. Knossos itself shows a destruction layer, though unlike most other palaces, it was reoccupied. This time by Mycenaean Greeks, which we know because the Linear B tablets themselves, including the one naming the mistress of the labyrinth, are written in early Greek, administering what had been a Minoan palace. Whoever was writing those tablets was running the palace's economy, tracking wool, wine, and chariot wheels in exhaustive administrative detail, while apparently continuing to make offerings to a goddess whose title they inherited without necessarily inheriting the full story behind her. So, here's the shape of the argument, and I want to be very clear that this is a synthesis, not a proven chain of causation. You have a real maze-like palace, an intensive bull cult, a real symbol, the double axe, that may be the actual root of the word labyrinth, tied to a real goddess title on a real tablet, and a real sudden collapse of the whole system, followed by a conquest of people who inherited the buildings and the title without fully understanding what either had originally meant. Put those pieces together, shake for a few centuries of retelling by people several generations removed from the original context, and a monstrous king demanding human tribute to hide something terrible in an unknowable maze, is not a bad way for a latter culture to compress the idea that there used to be an enormously complex bull-worshipping palace state here called the House of the Double Axe, and then it fell. Realistically, the Minotaur never breathed, but the maze was real. The bulls were real. The double axe carved into the stone is there to this day, and somewhere in a fragmentary clay tablet, a goddess with labyrinth in her name was real too, worshipped by people who left almost no other record of what they meant by it. Think back to the tribute ship at the start of this episode. 14 young Athenians crossing the sea towards something they couldn't map. In a strange way, that's still what we're doing here, 3,500 years later, walking into a real maze, looking for a monster, and finding instead a goddess, a cult, and a civilization that fell before anyone thought to write down what it had actually believed. Sometimes the myth doesn't explain the evidence, and sometimes the evidence is stranger and quieter than the myth ever needed to be. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it was a little rushed, as The Odyssey just came out in theaters, and I've got to lock in on making videos about that. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Please leave a comment if you have anything specific you would like me to cover, and yeah, I'll hear you guys next time.